This podcast is for educational and informational purposes only, and does not constitute medical, legal, or financial advice. Always consult qualified professionals regarding your specific situation. All opinions expressed are those of the hosts and guests. The hosts and producers assume no liability for actions taken based on the content of this podcast.
Welcome to Health Yeah, the show where we make health feel a little less intimidating and a whole lot more fun. I'm Cheyenne, your co-host and resident comedic relief, here to keep things light. Usually we have Dr. David Pei hosting and leading the charge, but today he's nowhere to be found, so we got Eva instead, co-host and producer, making sure the magic happens behind the scenes and on the mic. And of course, we've got John, the brains behind the operation and our co-producer, keeping us on track. Together, we're here to bring you real conversations, practical tips, and maybe a few laughs along the way. So buckle up, because when it comes to your health, the answer should always be Health Yeah. Alrighty, since we're here without Dr. Pei, John, what should we talk about today?
Daddy's not home today, so I think we should go a little wild.
Let's record an extra 3 minutes.
Yeah, let's talk about bone broth. What do you think, Eva?
I think that's a good idea.
Wild.
That's wild and crazy, John. I don't know if we should come up with that or not, but wild and crazy bone broth day. All right, well, let's talk about it. You hear about it all the time. It's trending. So let's talk about why people are interested in what it is.
I feel like it's like the it thing. You know, growing up,
Yep.
My mom would talk about bone broth and I was like sort of grossed out by it. And then the older I've gotten, I feel like you hear about it more and more, and it's become very popular, and I would love to learn more about it. So
It's kind of like your mama says, all the styles come back around if you just keep your clothes long enough. So
keep the bone broth close by. It's going to come back in style.
yeah, I think it's coming back in style. So, John, what is it? What's the difference between bone broth and, stock and chicken broth, like just broth?
Yeah, I had the same question because I didn't know what broth versus stock was. So I did a little research and I found out that stock is very similar to bone broth, and broth, just for example, chicken broth is just broth made from meat, like chicken meat, and is usually simmered for about 3 hours or less, and that's qualified as a chicken broth, for example. Chicken stock, it's made from chicken bones and maybe some meat, so you actually have some of the bone quality in the stock, but the simmer time is usually less than 12 hours. So when you go to the store, when you make your own bone broth at home, you are simmering the broth for over 12, sometimes up to 24 or even more hours.
Interesting. So basically, it's the time that they actually simmer the meat or the bones that would make it.
Yeah, because you go to the store, you see chicken stock, chicken broth, and then you see chicken bone broth. It's pretty confusing.
It's very confusing, and that's why I'm glad we're doing this episode, so we can shed some light on this. So.
Another reason we're doing this episode, because we did an experiment and we tasted some bone broth, and we wanted to share it with the audience and see what kind of results we have.
I can't wait for that part.
Well, I kind of think that, we always just grew up cooking with chicken stock. And I think broth and stock is more for flavor, but bone broth actually has a lot of nutrition in it and a lot of collagen. And you can't get that unless you have a long simmer time from the bones.
Makes sense. So what are the health benefits of drinking bone broth?
Bone broth has all the collagen and the gelatin in it. That's good for tissue repair. We get used to eating a lot of meat, but not a lot of other parts of the animal. We don't get the nutrition that people used to get.
Yeah, back before it was available. It also has a lot of protein in it. So it is a good way to add it to your food to increase the nutritional density or the nutritional value of your food. But I think in the past, people didn't just eat the nice cuts of a animal. They ate everything, which included the collagen. They made bone broth and they used it in their cooking and that kind of thing.
Right. And bone broth has a lot of amino acids like glycine and proline in it. They're good for keeping your cartilage and connective tissue healthy and support tissue repair. So I think that's one of the reasons why bone broth is becoming more popular again nowadays.
I just remember growing up, it was every month or so, my mom would have a huge pot of bones or chicken feet, actually, and she would just let it simmer overnight. Almost burned the house down a couple times, but we won't talk about that. And then she would just bag it and freeze it. So anytime we wanted a soup or we were feeling sick, she would just grab a bag and make the soup. And I took it for granted because then years later, when it started becoming popular, I'm going to the store trying to buy the bone broth. And I'm calling my mom. I'm like, Mom, it's like $20 to get a bag of frozen bone broth. And she's like, now you understand why I did it.
Yeah, it's true. It's expensive to get very good bone broth. I think it's really good for your gut health too, you
Well,
know.
I make my own bone broth every once in a while, and Eva, you do too, right?
Yeah, I do. I do.
How do you make yours?
How I make mine is I save some bones. Like I roast chicken quite a bit, and I'll save bones from a couple chickens and put them in the freezer, and then I will take the bones and simmer them for 24 to 30 hours with some spices, a little bit of mineral salt, and then I will also put onions or whatever in there. But simmer, I made it in a crock pot over 24 hours. And then John told me about this thermos thing. What's the name of that thermos thing? I like that a lot.
It's called a shuttle chef, I think.
Yeah, and so what you do is you just heat it up on the stove and then you put it in that thing and seal it up, and it basically cooks for pressure and heat. You just leave it alone for 24 hours. So that's my
Oh,
favorite
I
way to
didn't
do
even
it.
know about
Oh,
this.
yeah, John
I need to
taught me.
try this.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, it's
because
really
I
cool.
don't, to be honest with you, I don't like to smell anything cooking for 24 hours, even if
Absolutely.
it's simmering. So you just put it in there and then
It does its thing.
it does its thing. It's great.
Should we say that we're not sponsored by this product?
Yeah, we are not. We are not sponsored by anybody. But it's a great little thing to make soups, and you don't have to use any electricity. You can like literally do it and then go leave.
Sounds like a sales pitch to me.
We can link it in the bio.
Right. No, but I'm going to look into that. I want to try it. So
I use it to make all the soups in the wintertime. So it's really cool. You just throw everything in there and boil it. Once it's boiling, you just put it back in the little container, seal it, and it will just pressure cook. It takes like 2 hours for chicken noodle soup, or maybe less than that. I don't know.
okay.
I usually just let it sit and then just walk away and do stuff and come back and dinner's ready.
That's amazing.
We talked about how I made my bone broth every once in a while, and Eva does too. And Cheyenne, I don't know if you do.
I've done it in the past, but not regularly. I just go over to Mom's house and raid her freezer. So
I think I want to go to your mom's house. She makes every day you bring in food that smells delicious. If you've been to
Yeah,
visit
what's your
mom lately.
address?
Yeah.
I know,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, I'll link it in the bio.
Good idea.
So, are there any other benefits before we get to our experiment of bone broth? Because I feel like it's like a long, long list that you always hear about.
I think the collagen certainly for skin and hair, joints.
And
I
your gut
know
lining too.
the gut
Oh, yeah.
lining is
You always hear
a
about
big
that.
thing. The gut lining. What I think about is we have a lot of people that we know that are on GLP-1s and are trying to diet, all that stuff. It's a good way to make your food a little more nutritionally dense, I think. You can cook rice in it. You can put it in soups. You can do like when my dad was sick, for instance, I couldn't get a lot of food in him. So he loved soup. So I made it with bone broth. So at least it had some collagen and it had some protein. It was a little it was a way to get a little more nutrition.
I don't know how much you have to drink to get the true benefits, but it doesn't hurt to add it, like Eva said, in your soup, in your rice.
Uh-huh.
And David talked about this in the past. I remember we see a lot of patients coming in, they're middle-aged people, and they
Uh-huh.
would come in for shoulder surgery.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of them are very muscular, but yet they hurt their shoulders very easily.
Uh-huh.
David believes that just eating meat should not be the only source of your food intake. So, for example, drinking bone broth, you get the benefits from other parts of the animal.
Yeah, he actually does just sip bone broth, and which is a great nutritionally thing to do. I don't do that. I put it in other stuff, but I do think it's a great way to, particularly if you're trying to heal. If you're trying to heal anything, if you're trying to heal from a joint surgery or any of that stuff, I think bone broth is very important. It's hard to get collagen other ways. I mean, you can take supplements, but I think that a natural bone broth would be better utilized by your body.
Yeah, I totally agree. Let's talk about the experiment.
Okay.
All right. So we talked about making bone broth. We know that a lot of people who are listening to us, they just don't have the time to do that at home. Well, they don't have a mother like Cheyenne, right?
Yeah.
Make bone broth
Or
for
they
them.
don't have our shuttle thing.
Right.
Right, the shuttle thing, I feel like, is the game changer.
It's much easier to just buy bone broth at the store. So we thought it would be interesting to run an experiment evaluating the taste and appearance of several store-bought bone broths. Eva and I went to 2 major grocery stores here in Georgia, Kroger and Publix, and we selected 6 different brands
And Trader Joe's.
and Trader Joe's, right?
Mhm.
To keep the process unbiased, we asked someone who was not involved in the experiment, which is my wife Jen, to label the broths, portion them into numbered jars, and store them in the refrigerator. That way, Cheyenne, Eva, and I wouldn't know which brand we're tasting. Each day, we would take one numbered jar, heated it in the microwave, and recorded our observations on both taste and appearance. And then we repeated the process until we had tasted all the samples. And that's how we did the experiment. I'm sure that you guys had a lot of fun doing that.
The best part was the way that I received my bone broth. In a
Tell us,
nice little
Cheyenne.
kid's lunchbox, and it was so nicely packed in these little miniature mason jar type glass bottles. And I was like, I just want to keep this and not even open them or drink them. But no, it was a very cool experiment. I was actually very surprised at the different consistencies. I would say that was probably the thing that stood out to me the most between the 6. What did you guys think, or what stood out to you?
Definitely were different consistencies, and my guess is that probably correlated to how much protein and collagen were in each one, to the quality of that particular bone broth. And then some I thought tasted better than others. But yeah, that just and those were being kinda cloudy, the ones that were thicker.
I was more surprised by some of the broths that were not very thick at all. They looked almost like a regular broth to me,
Yeah.
because you should see it being thicker and with more gelatin-like substance in it.
Well, I think like Eva said, when we went back and we looked at it afterwards, the protein content sort of reflected that as well.
Yeah, so the 6 bone broths that we tested, they were soup, spells with Zoup, Imagine, Simply Truth, which is a Kroger brand, Kettle and Fire, Bare Bones, and Kitchen Basics. When Eva and I went to the store, we didn't really look at the brands. We just kind of picked them. We didn't even look to see if they were chicken versus beef bone broth, organic versus non-organic bone broth. We just picked them just to make it more unbiased.
Gotcha.
Okay, let's talk about the results.
So start with Cheyenne. You thought number 6, which was bare bones, tasted the best, and the appearance was also the best. I think you meant the consistency, the thickness of it.
Yeah, that's the only one that actually was gelatinous, like full on gelatinous when I took it out of the fridge. And then, I mean, I wasn't surprised to find out afterwards when we got the actual nutrition facts of all of them that it had the highest protein content. To me, it tasted the best too. So that's the one that I would go for if I had to choose one to buy. So
Yeah, and I thought the same way, and I thought the appearance of that broth was the best. But I personally thought number 4, which is soup, tasted the best to me. And as for Eva, Kettle and Fire was her choice for taste and appearance.
isn't it crazy the variation between different brands and protein content?
I think I think that's why you have to really pay attention to what you're buying because if something's popular, like bone broth, people will just label it bone broth, and so I think you really have to pay attention because they charge a fortune for it.
Yeah, I didn't know that brand soup. They add yeast extract in the broth, and that's for taste.
Very interesting.
So we think the winner probably is bare bones and
I would
kettle and
say and Kettle
fire
and Fire because I
and
had that
kettle and
ranked
fire.
as my second. So
Okay.
those are my, and I think
Just as far as quality.
I would agree. What do you think, Joe?
I see Kettle and Fire in major grocery stores all the time, and I
Mhm.
think they are in Publix and Kroger
Mhm.
around us in Georgia.
Mhm.
I'm sure that they are in Whole Foods too.
So, what would be considered like a high sodium level? Because I know sodium is also another thing that varies between the different brands. So, what would you consider like a good level of sodium or low, and what would be considered high sodium?
When we look at the sodium content for each bone broth, the highest amount is actually in Kettle and Fire and has 740 milligrams. So, based on the nutritional content, 540 milligrams of sodium is 23% of your recommended daily consumption. And so that is in bare bones.
So, Kettle and Fire is even more than that. So, that's a good bit of sodium. Wow.
Yeah, so that's like somewhere between, let's say, about 32%.
Wow. How about the sources of the bones that they use to make these?
Cattle and Fire is grass fed, but it's not organic. Talk about unwanted minerals found in bone broth, but I talked to David about it, and he said that it's the amount is so small. It's not something that we should worry about unless you drink so much of it.
I see.
Think, I think that, the takeaways to get real bone broth, you gotta look at the labels, and you gotta make sure it has enough protein, at least 7, 10 grams or more, as little sodium as possible, and reputable sourcing of where the bones are from, and if it's refrigerated, it's probably gonna be closer to homemade. The ones that are in the cartons, they're gonna be ultra pasteurized because they gotta have a long shelf life. So, not that they won't work, I mean, I buy them sometimes and use them. I still think they're better than, stock, but those are things I think you gotta look at and decide what you're getting.
Well, if you have the time to do it, it's not that bad to do it at home if you have a crock pot. You do have to bake the bones for an hour, and then you put everything in the crock pots, including the vegetables that you want to put in, and just let it simmer for 24 hours.
Or go to
So,
Cheyenne's mom's house.
or just go to my mom's house. I mean, I
I
think she's probably has at least 40 bags in her freezer. So the first 40 listeners that make it to her house get a
I'm gonna
free bag. And let's do a taste testing on that. She'd love to hear
Yeah,
about it.
yeah, let's do that.
I
That
think
would
that's what we should do.
I think
Okay.
absolutely.
I feel like could we give like a quick checklist, so like an easy takeaway for our listeners that if they go to the store and they're looking at all these different brands, maybe one that we didn't talk about today, what should they look for and when they're picking out a brand of bone broth?
What I look for is protein content, minimal ingredients, and as little sodium as possible. Those are the things I look for. I prefer it to be refrigerated if I can find it,
I agree. I
you
think
know?
I would look for, the ingredient section. The less ingredients they use,
Uh-huh,
the better.
uh-huh.
And
I
of
think
course, you
that's
look at the
simple
protein
enough.
level and all that.
Right. Right. That's what I normally do too.
I wouldn't like stuff that's just, like, collagen added. I'd rather it be naturally extracted, you know? Um, that's what I look for when I go to buy bone broth.
Right. Go back to the 6 bone broths that we tasted. The one made by Simply Truth,
Mhm.
they add yeast extract and lactic acid in the broth. And I don't see those 2 ingredients in the other 5 broths. So that's something to look for. The less, the better to me.
Always. Yeah, I think so.
So
I
should we
agree.
make like a homemade bone broth episode next? Cooking
We
with Mama
could.
Jahan?
I like that. Yes, I think we should get her on. We'll bring a
Make
shuttle. We'll bring the shuttle. We'll bring the
Bring Cheyenne's mom.
we'll bring
I know, right? Yeah,
yeah.
well, maybe we should do like a little short YouTube clip, and we'll just see the way that she does it.
I think
So
that's a great idea.
I've never seen a pot this big in someone's house though, so it'll be funny to videotape and have our viewers or listeners see it.
I
So.
think that's a great idea. I think
Well,
that's
this
a
has
great
been
idea.
super enlightening. I've learned a lot, and I think that just that experiment alone was fun and very interesting. I hope our viewers, our listeners, can take away the same amount that we did from doing that experiment.
Yeah. If this episode helped you, let's just like it and share it.
Always. Well, you've been listening to Health Yeah with Cheyenne, Eva, and John. No David today, bringing the medicine, the mayhem, and the laughs every week. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and YouTube for other educational videos and content. And remember, health isn't about perfection, it's about progress. So go out there and live your best healthy life.
This podcast is for educational and informational purposes only, and does not constitute medical, legal, or financial advice. Always consult qualified professionals regarding your specific situation. All opinions expressed are those of the hosts and guests. The hosts and producers assume no liability for actions taken based on the content of this podcast.